Hello YouTube and welcome to Cyprime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily focus on Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder, but today my video is for all TTRPG players from Pathfinder to Dungeons & Dragons and beyond. And if you want to help this channel out, I have a Patreon and Discord, more info at the end of the video. So it's Halloween time again, and it's time for another spooky video. Last year I talked about how to make indie horror mascots in Pathfinder 2e, so let's expand that out this year and talk about how to make an indie horror one-shot, or maybe even an entire indie horror-based campaign. But first let's define our terms. What do I mean when I say indie horror? Well, to oversimplify, indie horror can be any medium, books, YouTube videos, games, whatever. These works are made outside the mainstream media ecosystem and are often low budget but high creativity. Now, indie horror has been around for a long time. Just look at the smash hit 1999 film, The Blair Witch Project. This film may be looked down upon today, but trust me, in its heyday, it was wildly popular. Indie horror really came into its own a little over a decade back as of the posting of this video with the game Five Nights at Freddy's. This relatively simple gem of a puzzle game was where animatronics possessed by ghosts tried to eat you, a nighttime security guard. The smash hit of Five Nights at Freddy's of course inspired many copycat clones with slight variations, but it also showed other independent creators that they could make it big on their own or with small teams. For example, take The Walton Files, a series of YouTube videos with, let's face it, rather poor graphics. But that doesn't really matter because the story and creepy atmosphere are so engaging. So let's say you want to make an indie horror themed game in Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons, Daggerheart, Kids on Brooms, what have you. How do you do that? Well, I cannot give you a step-by-step instruction. There's no formula for creativity. But I can lay out several guidelines. So let's dive into how to make indie horror themed games for TTRPGs. But before we get started, a couple of things real quick. Firstly, if you plan on making a horror themed game, make sure you tell your players. Some players may not be into that sort of thing, so just make sure everybody's on the same page. Secondly, my plan for this video is to break it into 3 sections. First, we'll look at the elements of an indie horror plot to help you craft your own. Then we'll talk about the mechanics and the meta of starting up a game. And finally, I'll present you with a skeleton of a simple indie horror one-shot. Firstly, let's talk about the plot. How do you come up with one of those highly creative indie horror plots? Now, this next section is going to be a little cerebral and philosophical, so bear with me. First things first. One thing most indie horror games have in common is to take something innocuous and normal and either have it act in a strange way or put it in a strange place, sometimes both. What this does is take the thing, whatever it is, and put it into the realm of the unknown. And the unknown is scary because we, as humans, don't know what to expect or do about it. Five Nights at Freddy's is a great example of this. Animatronics don't normally try and eat people. So if these animatronics can do that, what else can they do? Fly? Shoot laser beams from their eyes? When you don't know the rules of how something will act, it becomes terrifying, even if that thing is a fuzzy mascot. Another great example of this is Vita Carnis. This indie horror series on YouTube is about an alternate universe where weird meat creatures act weird. This Vita Carnis can grow like plants in some cases, and this one is like a sausage but can get so big that it blocks underground tunnels in Germany. And these particular examples don't even do much most of the time, but just the fact that it is acting in a distinctly unmeat-like way can be deeply unsettling. Secondly, something you want to think about when making an indie horror-themed game is that you don't actually need to show or write anything too grotesque or violent. Horror, true horror, doesn't come from a scary monster, but from not knowing what it can do. Let the fact that your players don't know what's going on be the primary driver of horror. Remember, a lot of these indie horror titles are low budget. They can't afford a special effects team, so they lean on psychological horror to make things feel horrific even if they don't look it. A great example of this is Garten of Banban. Yes, the graphics are silly and not terrifying, but that's the point. The player doesn't know what these guys are capable of or what they're doing or why they're doing it. That's the terrifying bit of the game. Garten of Banban doesn't have to look terrifying because the unknown generates the terror for you. Plus, if you leave what can happen up to the player's imagination, they will always come up with something 10 times worse than whatever you can show or draw. The third piece of advice I can give you for generating indie horror themed plots is to keep the mystery. Sure, give your players some explanation, some little bit of something so that your players can have some sense of closure. But keep large bits of it a mystery, even at the end. The modern progenitor Five Nights at Freddy's does this. Despite being around for over a decade and having large chunks of its lore explained, we still don't know certain aspects of the story, like what exactly drove series antagonist William Afton to kick off the series of events that started everything. I think the best example of this mystery stuff is Local 58, a YouTube series about some strange something or other hijacking the airwaves of a local broadcast TV station, and then possibly trying to off humanity or drive them insane. Now there's a lot we do know about the series. The moon or something on it is trying to off humanity in a concerted effort by hijacking TV signals. But there's a lot we don't know about it, the motives, the identity of the entity, what they're capable of. And that mystery keeps things fresh and scary. If at the end of your TTRPG game everything is tied up with a neat little bow, it loses something. The final element for most indie horror series is to think about making the true monster man. Yeah, I know it's cliche, but there's something to be said about humanity, or humanoids like elves, dwarves, or the like, being the true monsters. I think, personally, that the only thing more horrifying than the threatening unknown is the idea that some mortal could unleash that level of horror on the world and not care. Or even worse, could like it. Let's go down the list of all the horror series I've just mentioned today and see how many of them were started or at least exacerbated by humans being terrible. Five Nights at Freddy's, human serial killer kicks off the first several games when the ghosts of his victims seek revenge. Walton Files, drunk man kills 2 kids and tries to cover it up, leading to their ghosts. Garten of Banban, evil corporation plays God then terribly mistreats the life they create. Vita Carnis and Local 58, those are trickier, but there's good evidence in both of those that the governments of those series are helping the big bad evil thing try to do its evil plots. Now before we leave this section, I do want to make sure I mention the obvious: present a threat to your players. Like a serious threat. Something that they can't easily fight or magic away. There's got to be some sort of monster or thing that could legitimately unalive your players. Again, not just a standard dragon or undead to fight against, but some creature that they cannot fight. If you have a bunch of unknown stuff without a genuine threat, then it becomes just confusing. It's only horror when the unknown is combined with the true threat and definite purpose, even if the players don't know what that purpose is. As long as the enemy has a definite purpose, even if it's not clear what it is, then it becomes horror. Actually, all of this is a great segue into our second section: how do you actually plan out one of these games? Now, in most TTRPGs, you will want to have the players fight some monsters and win, but winning against monsters isn't scary. If you know a monster can be beaten, then it really dramatically reduces the tension. So how do you solve this problem? And the answer is actually very easy and is provided to us via the indie horror game Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. The answer is to just have 2 threats. One you can fight, like these smiling critters here, and one you can't fight, like Catnap. In the game, you can fight off the smiling critters, but if you don't do it well, they will unalive you. But you legitimately cannot fight off Catnap. He's immune to your weapons. Now, you do want to clearly signal to your players that the big unfightable threat is in fact unfightable, and so I do recommend not making it a big monster like Catnap. Instead, I recommend making it some force or something that you just can't fight against. Perhaps a deadly mist that they can't punch. Maybe the environment itself is a threat, such as with the indie horror game Finding Frankie. Sure, this game has a giant death monster, but the bigger threat is the nearly endless series of death traps. So yes, I suggest you have smaller enemies you can fight so that you can scratch that TTRPG combat itch, but also a larger looming threat that the party has to run and hide from or outwit or something. Make it clear that winning is not an option against the bigger threat. Maybe have it insta-kill some NPCs at the start of the session, or show in some other way that there's no punching your way out of this. This actually leads me to my final section, building an outline for an indie horror one-shot using an indie horror series that I have not yet talked about, Kane Pixel's Backrooms. Now, to be clear, there are multiple different takes on the Backrooms with varying levels of horror. I'm specifically talking about Kane Pixel's version. In this indie horror series, a company named Async makes a machine that rips a hole in space and time, giving them access to what appears to be some sort of unused furniture warehouse dimension. At first it seems safe, but we quickly learn that the architecture of this place makes no sense, and worse yet, there are dangerous creatures in these so-called backrooms. Nonetheless, despite the dangers, the company starts doing shady dealings in order to exploit this obviously dangerous place for profit. Meanwhile, their tampering with the fabric of the universe has caused random other temporary portals in the backrooms to open up, leading everyday people to fall in, get lost, and eventually succumb to the horrors therein. I feel like this, or something like it, could be a perfect one-shot for your indie horror-themed game for your TTRPG. It has all the elements we listed. You have an entire dimension full of things and buildings being out of place and acting strangely. We don't see any kind of grotesque violence, but we know it happens. And while we do know some information that this is an endless pocket universe and Async were the ones who made a portal to it, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, like why it looks like this or what the deal with the backrooms creatures are. And of course, while humanity probably didn't create the backrooms or the monsters in it, Async is ready to exploit it for profit, not caring about the people that died. There's even those fightable and unfightable threats. The backrooms does have vaguely humanoid monsters that the players could fight. I mean, the people in the video don't fight those monsters, but they're unarmed civilians. I assumed a trained adventuring party could fight them. Anyway, there's also the larger threat that the PCs cannot fight. Some sort of green crackling glow in the backrooms that you can't fight. Not to mention there's the threat of just getting lost in the backrooms. There's little food or water there, and even if your party has spells to take care of that, there's the threat of just never finding your way out, of being trapped there forever. And to be clear, there are ways out of the backrooms. We see that at least once. However, there's no clear method of escape. It seems almost random. So there's leeway for you, the GM, to tell a great story about your players being stuck in some endless quote-unquote dungeon, and then the players have to find some way out, all the while avoiding deadly monsters while their food and water dwindles. Great stuff for a horror one-shot. And yeah, for a one-shot, plop your characters into the backrooms, have them wander around, finding strange things that are out of place, have them fight some monsters, all the while the creepy atmosphere of them not being able to escape sets in. Maybe give them one shot to escape before the inevitable starvation, or like an unbeatable horde of those monsters find them, but emphasize they missed their one shot and they cannot try again. I think that would make a decent spooky Halloween session. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Does this idea appeal to you? Have you done it before? Let's get a conversation going. Hey, as a reminder, I have a Patreon. I'm going to try and post something fun there once a month, but honestly, it's just a fun way to help keep this channel financially viable. Just a few bucks a month, and I'm toying with the idea of adding a limited higher tier where you can request a specific video. Let me know what you think. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!